So now we are done with while and do while loops, and the next loop is for loop. So for loops, they allow for repetitive execution of some specific blocks of code without repetitive coding, without writing the same code once again. There are two types of loops: for loop and enhanced loop. And we will start with for loop. For this purpose, we will create a new class that is called for loop 1. The structure for loop looks in the following way. For is written first as a keyword, and then inside of parentheses you need to put 3 different statements. First is initialization, next condition, and the last one increment or decrement. Then we are opening our curly braces and we are putting our statements inside. And that's all. That's all for our for loop. So I'll copy it as always and comment out, and we'll leave it for your information here. And let us now come to an example when we have just some simple for loop. You see that in this case you allowed to do initialization inside of the loop in this parenthesis. So you can declare and initialize your variable I here at the beginning. However, we will now do it here inside. And now we have declared and initialized our variable I, that is equals to 0. The condition that we are writing here is, for example, that I is less than 5. And increment I plus plus. As statement, we just would like to print out the value of I. So now I will use not print line but print statement, and this is a statement that tells you to print all our values of I, not starting every time from the new line but on the same line, and I will separate them with space. So maybe first I will show you without space. This is how it looks like. So first the variable I is initialized and assigned value 0. Then it is checked whether the 0 is less than 5. It is true. Then in this case the statements will be executed and this variable I is incremented. So for the next run of the loop the I will be already equal to 1. And we are printing the 0 to the console, the first one. So in order to, now you see that all our numbers are printed here. And I would like to separate them. That's why I'm putting just one space here. So if you would put here print line that we are using usually, you would receive every number on starting from the new row. In this case, you receive all numbers on one row. So let us say that you would like to print those elements here in reverse and also using for loop. For this task, we will create new class for loop 2. Okay, so let's just try the very simple case that just putting the reverse numbers. Here we have 5 and here we put 0, and of course our decrement should be now increment. The increment will be now decrement, and we are printing. So remember, we want to print 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 in reverse order. So 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. When we are executing these lines, what we see that the numbers are different. We are starting with 5 and printing till 1. And here we need to correct. So we are putting here 4 and greater or equals to 0. And now we do have our desired values printed in reverse order. This is a very simple example. Let us come to some more interesting ones. Let us create a new class that is called for_loop_3, and we are creating the main method as well. So first, what you could do, you can declare a variable outside the loop, before loop, the variable that you will be using inside of a loop. So this is integer x that equals to 0. And now we're coming to our loop. So first, initialization. In this initialization part, you are allowed to declare and initialize more than one variable. So let us say we have long variable y that equals to 0, and then you are putting comma, and then you are declaring and initializing another variable 4. However, this second variable has to be of the same type as this your first variable, and this is long. It means that you are declaring and initializing two variables of type long, y and this is z and z. Now the next is our condition, and let us say that x should be less than 5 and y should be less than 10. And you want to use increment for x and increment for y. And this is how you're doing this. So remember, in initialization, you're separating the two values with comma and with increment also. And here inside you are using this and statement if you want that both of them are equal to true. If not, then you have to use the corresponding signs. So now we want to print here some statements. System out print a new line, the value of y plus z plus some space. And then what we want to okay, let's first let's execute this part, and we see now the result of this loop. So this is, we are printing now the sum of this. Actually, we could also use here print. Exactly. So we see now the sum of the very first run. So in the first run, we have, in the first execution iteration, we had 0 plus 4, and this is 4. So you're printing actually the sum already to our console. The interesting or important to remember is that the variables that you are initializing and declaring inside of the loop, you can use them only inside of the loop. If you are declaring a variable outside of the loop, then you can use this variable also afterwards. So now let us write some printing statement after our loop. The next x value is, and we are adding here x. And we will put here also, we want to have this from the new line. That's why. Okay, no, maybe let's do it in this way. Okay. So what you have now? You have now the loop that is running here as long as this condition is met. And then you are using the x value that is already, this value has already changed since you have here incremented inside of the loop. So you are declaring and initializing a variable outside of the loop, then you are changing the value of this variable inside of the loop, and afterwards you can still, after this loop, you can still use this variable since you have initialized and declared it before the loop. So if you would like, for example, to use here y, then you would receive here arrow. Since this is a local variable, that means that this variable can be used only inside of this local environment for loop, but we will talk about the types of variables in our next exercise. And once more. The next type of the loop is enhanced loop. Enhanced loop is used to iterate over a set of values. So usually this loop is used for arrays, to iterate over the elements of arrays, or to iterate over the elements of some collections. Let us create a new class that is called enhanced loop. So let us say that we have array of strings with the names, and we are now initializing, declaring and initializing this array. This is new string that will have 3 elements, and these elements are the following. So the first element is name Lisa. The next element with index 0 is Kevin. And the last one, the third element with index 2 is Roger. So we do have here our array now. Next, what we want to do, we want to print out each element of the array to the console. So of course, you could write printing statements for each element. Since we do have here only 3 elements, so you could use indices of those of array to print those elements to the console. However, just imagine that you have not only 3 of them, but hundreds of elements inside of your array. In this case, you really don't want to write those printing statements, and in this case, you do want to use for loop, enhanced for loop. And this structure is a bit different from the structure for loop, since you don't have, it's pretty easier. because you don't have initialization, condition, and termination inside of parentheses, because you do have already your array. And what you do have to write inside, you have to specify first the data type. So this is data type of your instance, and then you're writing your instance here, and you're putting here the collection name. Then you're opening your curly braces and you're putting your statements here inside. So data type is usually, this is actually the same data type that is for your collection name. Collection name in our case is here names. So collection name is the name of your array, and this is names. The instance is the name that you are giving now here inside of this for loop to each element of the of this collection name. It means that, for example, if your collection name is names, then you are giving some name, let us say name, for this loop. So let us maybe just start with example to make it a bit clearer. For data type, we have string already. Then collection name corresponds to the name of your array, and these are names. And the name that you are giving to the instance here inside is name. You could also write here I. It's also okay, but we will. The convention is to put here name in singular. Since you are usually writing, it is advised to write the names, to give the names to your arrays in plural. So here we have names, and this is the same as here, but in singular. And we have here our statements, and statements are that we do want to print the names to our console. So how to read this for enhanced for loop? For each name in the array names, do the following. And when we are running the code, indeed we receive the results that we were expected to see.